I am going to beat you into the living death.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man Ant Walker here with the next edition of the Living Death Show. Once again, happy to introduce these two gentlemen who need no introduction, but we love them so much we're going to do it anyway. First up is the jack of all trades who has mastered them all, the senior editor of Sherdog.com, drinking himself a fine espresso, Mr. Ben Duffy. What's up, Ben?
I am doing great. It is fight week. UFC 271 is here in Houston. I'm going to be spending much of the week probably doing fight week stuff, just, press stuff. And then I get to watch some pretty awesome fights on Saturday. It's a good week.
Absolutely. Definitely great week for Ben in Houston. And of course, the associate editor of Sherdog.com, the man with the stats, the facts, the figures, and the numbers, my man, Jay Petrie. What's up, Jay?
I'm doing well. I'm not doing as well as I want to, because ideally I would have very much liked to flown down to Houston and cover UFC 271 like Ben and I tag teamed 247 back in 2020, which, by the way, was right before the pandemic. We missed it. We missed it by this much. Oh my gosh. So it would have been good to get that band back together, but it's a whole time thing. But instead of talking about me for a second, I do want to ask Ben you something. You're going to be at Media Day 271 covering all these things, talking to everybody there. Who are you most looking forward to talking to on the fight card? Just thinking about people. And why is it Roxanne Modafferi?
I mean, that would be the obvious one, but Roxanne Modafferi, at this point in her career, and as many kind of peripheral interactions that I've had with her over the years, there's nothing much to say in like the 5-minute car wash, that they're probably going to do with a 15-fight card.
Oh yeah.
I mean, she's more somebody that would be nice to have like a 90-minute sit down with at this point.
That makes some sense.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Stat of the week, real quick. 8 is the stat of the week because 8 is the number of fights that Sam Alvey has competed in without getting a win. 4 losses in a row, a draw to Da Un Jung, and 3 losses in a row, including 2 finishes, most recently in which a rear naked choke to Brendan Allen in a fight, by the way, I believe he was winning until he got dropped. So I just like to say that was interesting. He ties BJ Penn's winless record in the UFC history because BJ Penn drew with John Fitch after that abysmal third round where he ate like 200 punches and they fought to a draw and then lost his next 7. So both he and BJ Penn have an 8-fight stretch where they didn't win a fight. And I'm looking forward to Sam Alvey's next fight. I hope he fights Phil Hawes in the next go round.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning that, like, off camera before we started recording, we were talking a little bit about Sam Alvey, and I insisted that he was 39 years old to the point that I made Jay look 2 different places before I would admit that I was wrong about this. And this is after I did a preview and a recap about Sam Alvey in the last 10 days. Like, I looked at Sam Alvey's record and talked about him for probably 30 or 45 minutes, and just I had in my head that he was pushing 40, and nope, he's 35. Like the miles, it's the miles.
Yeah, for real. I mean, when we talk about just aging in fight years, Sam Alvey's got to be in his 60s. Like that man has taken a massive amount of punishment over the years.
There's something in him that's like, I am not going to die of skin cancer. I'm going to fight. Because dude is extra ginger, so he's like, I'm going to fuck up all the actuarial tables
he had there.
Yeah.
That was beautiful.
Super 10. All right. So it's really no easy transition because I feel like we have to address the biggest story in MMA right now, but it's outside of the cage. And unfortunately, it's some other dumb stuff that has to be discussed before we can go on talking about what we really want to talk about. So I don't think you need to be any sort of Nostradamus to know the name that's about to come out my mouth, Joe Rogan, who has this exclusive deal with Spotify for his podcast, the Joe Rogan Experience. I think they paid him with like $100 million or something for this. And since he's been there, there's been a ton of controversy. It started with the COVID-19 conspiracy theorists that he's had on there and the anti-vaxxers and whatnot, and that agenda that was being pushed heavily on his platform. This then turned into, interestingly enough, an R&B artist by the name of India Ari, who know if you guys remember her. She had some pretty good hits back in the day, but she brought up on social media how Spotify pays this man so much, pays artists so little, and the included with the COVID disinformation, like racial slurs that have been very prominent on his show. There was a compilation video put together of just different times that he dropped the N-bomb with the hard ER, so we can't even go with the rap excuse, the hard ER, over and over and over again. I felt like we need to address this because he is longtime UFC color commentary. And before we get into our opinions of this particular scandal or fiasco, however you want to label it, as far as the UFC is concerned, will he be there in Houston to call the fights this weekend, and will we see him again on that broadcast?
Joe Rogan will 100% fight tonight. We will get him out of jail. No, there's no doubt in my mind that Rogan will be there. I would be surprised if there's even a UFC response. I would genuinely be surprised. I mean, it would be prudent considering what month this is, but that we know the UFC can be tone deaf about these things, leading with Michael Chandler for Black History Month. I couldn't imagine the UFC be like, oh, because how many times Dana will be like free speech, and yeah, but free speech doesn't make you immune to consequences of the things that you say. You may not be, prohibited from saying them from a legal standpoint. You may have the right to say them, but other people also have the right to take you to task for it, right? I think that should be how it should be, at least.
Yeah, freedom of speech, not freedom of consequences. A very basic principle there, Ben. What do you think? Is Jay right? Will Joe Rogan be back on the UFC broadcast without any sort of statement from the organization?
I fully expect that he'll be there this Saturday. He'll be there, and my guess will be that not a thing will be said about it. Well, I mean, Jay kind of jokingly brought up harked back to the Jeremy Stevens situation from a decade ago, but it's worth mentioning that you hold that up as an example of how Dana White reacts to being told what he can and can't do.
That's right.
And here you're talking about not just another disposable fighter, because we found out just how much he really cares about Jeremy Stevens within the last month, but somebody in Rogan that I have the feeling he considers a personal friend. I mean, he went out of his way to say that he sought out Dr. Rogan's advice when he had COVID himself, took that good horse stuff and got all better. No, like it's the kind of hill that, Dana will fight on. My guess is that Rogan will be there as though nothing is wrong. The question is how appropriate is or is not that, because there are multiple different things going on here. For one, the COVID disinformation, and then the history of just racial slurs, and not just individual words, but just saying and expressing really regressive and inappropriate thoughts. For those who aren't familiar with the story, Spotify pulled 70 of his episodes, which even
now it's up to 110, I believe.
Okay.
Wow.
As they go back through the archive. But even there's two parts to this, because Rogan did issue an apology, and for what it's worth, I love the line, never ruin an apology with an excuse. It was mostly apology. And, if you just take the words, of his apology at face value, it was well worded, and it seemed, pretty contrite as public figure apologies go. It's not for me to let him off the hook or not. Just that was my reading of it. The response of his fan base to the apology is something that is shaking my faith in humanity. And that is something that I don't know if it's fair to take Rogan to task for, other than in the indirect sense of this is the fan base you've cultivated and they're mostly fucking assholes.
I would like to ask a question, and I would like Mr. Walker to answer this for me. what is your take? What do you feel when you see the I stand with Joe Rogan? That movement, which Ben touched on about the fans pushing for Rogan and
Do
supporting
you have
him.
to stand? He's 5'3".
The last emotion I felt seeing a lot of those responses was surprise or shock. This is exactly what I expected to happen.
You're saying this won't make your I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcon segment.
This will not make my I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons, unless we do it in the ironic sense. Like fans, MMA fans, and I don't want to say, as a whole, but I do want to say that there's a vocal contingent of MMA fans who have continued to express some very, very regressive, foolish, and outdated ideas. And they throw this out there as if it's gospel truth, and if it's fact, and if it's a way to pretty much discount the experiences, beliefs, and thoughts of anyone else. And that doesn't shock me in the least bit, as one of the few, black MMA journalists that has been, on the scene in the last several years or so. Like I've felt this personally. I've gotten the dumb DMs, I've gotten the comments, I've gotten, the vitriol thrown at me simply for expressing my existence, which, of course, you guys know me, I meet that with a middle finger and a smile. In fact, I look forward to it sometimes. But I'm of different minds of this, because first before I get into my emotions and thought process related to Rogan specifically, the response from the UFC, there will be none, unless of course it comes from Disney. That's the one factor that we're not considering now. Remember, in the fiasco that led up to Jacksonville UFC 249,
the Tachi Palace, California
exactly, and there was this hard-nosed, this fight is going to happen and we're going to make it happen, and they went through moving mountains to get this done in the most haphazard and foolish way possible, until they got a call from Disney that said, no, this ain't the move, fam. So if someone from Disney makes that call and tells Dana or Ari Emanuel or whoever needs to be talked to in this situation, say, yeah, this guy's not welcome on the broadcast, at least Saturday. Maybe you wait till the heat dies down and you bring him back. But also too, if you're Joe Rogan, do you want to come back necessarily? This guy's had one foot out the door forever. He's made it very clear that he doesn't plan on sticking around for long. If I'm Rogan, I'm probably going to walk off with my millions and step out of the spotlight and just chill until this heat dies down. That's probably what I'm going to do if I'm Joe Rogan. Now, my opinion of this is pretty complex. First off, Joe Rogan himself, I do not believe him to be a racist person as far as I hate this race or I hate this race or I think lowly of this race. Mm-hmm. He is a comedian, and I think it's important that comedians exist in a broader sense of free speech where they can say certain things that may be deemed unacceptable, and as long as the focus isn't always on one particular group or has some sort of broader perspective attached to it that we can laugh at, I'm not too mad at it. The problem is when he has built his platform as a comedian, where you have that sort of license, but you put it into these serious conversations. You put it into these serious conversations with people who are not funny, people who do not have that same sort of elbow room when it comes to what they can say and what they can get away with. You've continually had people who have been repeatedly featured on this platform who have done nothing but spew hatred, spew stupidity, spew disinformation. And this is what's overwhelmingly gotten the eyeballs on him. This is what he's built his platform off. You have to be responsible in these cases. You have to be. And you got to take you got to take your licks. If you open the door to have a buffoon sitting across that desk, you have aligned yourself with that buffoon's ideas. And if you bring that buffoon back several times over and he continues to spew this nonsense, and you continue to sit there and listen to it and feed into it, you have simply created this synergy. And now when you are under the microscope for things that you've said that sound eerily like something that one of these dummies that you've had on your platform would say as well, don't be surprised when people take it seriously. Don't be surprised when people forget that you are a comedian. Don't be surprised at all. And now take your licks. That's the bid you made. Now it's time to lie in it. Um, I don't. I'll reiterate. I do not think that Joe Rogan is a hateful, racist, bigoted human being. I don't believe that. But I don't think he's a smart man. A lot of times, I think he's a damn fool. I think he invites bigoted fools on his platform, and he sits next to them to the point where kind of hard to say for sure. And if you're blurring the lines that much, you got a real problem, bro. You got a real problem, and it's time for you to step back and evaluate the people that are in your circle. Um, there was a time where his show seemed to have more of a broader perspective.
Yes.
There was a time where there were more variety in the guests. There was more there was more difference of opinion.
It's more
with
of a
the people that
spectrum from.
exactly
Oh,
people
of
that sat
course.
across him. Yeah, we're all over the spectrum. And that time in particular, I did enjoy listening to the show just as a podcast enthusiast. I enjoyed listening to sometimes I enjoy listening to opposite perspectives and trying to see how they think, and was there any validity to a lot of their statements. But when that's all that you put on there, um and then occasionally you throw a rapper on, I'm sorry, that's just not enough. That's just not enough. And I'll tell you, man, it was particularly difficult to listen to one clip in particular that I don't know if you guys saw this on Twitter. Apparently it was long deleted from, I think from what I understand, his people deleted this before the Spotify deal. There's a clip where he's talking to someone else, and I don't remember who it was he was talking to, and he's prompting him to say the N-word. And he's prompting him to say it to prove that it's not that big of a deal. And that's what I got from that clip. It made me sick to my stomach. And I still will say that I don't think he particularly is a racist person, but you got to be smarter than that. Have we all said things that can be interpreted in a prejudiced way, or racist, or transphobic, or misogynist, or whatever the case may be? Yes, I'm sure everyone has. The difference is you probably didn't have a microphone in front of you that was going out to millions of people, millions of impressionable people that take what you say as the truth. Be smart about your platform, people. Be very smart about your platform. And if you are one of the people providing a platform like Spotify, be smart about who you're handing these $100 million checks to. And pay your fucking artists.
I think that you raise a myriad of excellent points, but one I would like to touch on is the responsibility of the host. I mean, in addition to the blatant uses of the terminology and talking about some Planet of the Apes comparison and other things like that, it's providing the platform, the mouthpiece, the ability, and we lost Ant, to facilitate people that'll come on your show, like the guy that I'm sure you probably have seen, that was speaking along the lines of accepting the debate about a black gene predilection towards violence, and this one was arguing that there's a debate that black people are more prone to violence because of genetics or something like that. To allow that kind of nonsense to be on your show as an actual possible viewpoint is inherently massively problematic.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I
Sure.
didn't hear about that.
It was I forget.
That's one wrinkle I missed in this.
I forgot. I'll send you the clip. It was a 30-second or so clip of Rogan interviewing guy who was expressing the debate about that, and it was just one. It was just one of another. I mean, this has been a deluge of
excuse
historical.
me for just interrupt
Sure,
just a little bit more.
please.
Let me revamp my stance.
Please.
Fuck him with a broomstick. If we're going to that extent, there's one thing to have differing political opinions. It's one thing to be a conservative. I don't care if you're a conservative. I don't care if you believe in smaller government and lower taxes or whatever the case may be. Have at it. But if you're spewing that sort of pseudoscience nonsense to downplay the intellect, the accomplishments, the contributions to modern civilization of an entire race, you can suck a bag of dicks, man. Like that's just not even, man, fuck him. If that's the case, fuck him.
It was Chuck Johnson who was the person that was speaking with him. It was talking about, yes, a proclivity towards violence is who
dude,
Rogan brought on. And
if
that,
you're sitting across from somebody like that and you letting them on, man.
And this is a guy who is a known far right guy who has been thrown off Twitter and dropped all kinds of things. But I also used to listen to JRE. This was back in like probably before there were 1,000. So that's been several years now since I listened to it. Because I think we're up to like we're coming up on 1,800 episodes. I checked, which means that if Spotify has removed over 100, that 6 or 7% of everything you've done is being pulled because of racial content. That's not just, kind of an offhanded reservation. That's not just a comment. That's a pattern. If over 5% of the things of all of your broadcasts are being pulled because of racially insensitive rhetoric that you yourself are saying, or your guests are saying, that makes me question, not that Rogan is a hateful person, but the pieces are starting to come together. Like, again, I share your belief. I can't step to the microphone and go, yeah, Joe Rogan's a racist and hates black people. No, I can't say that. But at the same time, I don't think in my life, I'm 35 years young, I don't believe I've ever once said the N-word in my life. Because I know I would never. Why would I say that? It's not something I would have to say. I didn't really listen to rap growing up. I from New England, so I didn't really have the breadth of experience and availability to listen to the thing. And I have some family, and anyway, so I can't even fathom just casually dropping the N-bomb. And some of those video clips, by the way, you saw the Indie Area compilation. A lot of them were, back in the Red Band days, and they're sitting in the couch or whatever, and Joey Diaz is sitting over there, all those kinds of things. Some of them are in like the LA studio that you could see that was like not that long ago that he said it, like months before he moved to Austin. So we're talking like within the last 2 years. So this isn't a catching somebody on Twitter for saying, what's his name? James Gunn. The director who for Guardians of the Galaxy and Suicide Squad, who got nailed many years ago for saying some, problematic things he said on Twitter. And he said they were jokes and they threw him out and stuff like that. It isn't a 10 years old, oh, this isn't who I was. It's a relatively recent kind of trend that makes me just, you kind of notice that what you said is wholly accurate at the very beginning about how the spectrum used to be wide and it has very much veered in a certain direction.
And his guests have become more serious and more intentional and purposeful.
Correct.
I mean, his whole shtick, because the whole structure of the show, the guests come on for long interviews and they're expansive and rambling, and Rogan's, his kind of default posture towards them is it's not confrontational because he's not there. He's not able to fact check them in the moment. So it ends up with a lot of, well, that's interesting. Somebody should look into that, which it's one thing when the person across from you says he has a pill that can turn water into gasoline. And it's a whole different thing if it's not some like a harmless crackpot, but somebody who has an agenda and is using you as a platform. At that point, even if you're a passive participant in it, and Rogan is very much a passive participant in his own show a lot of the time, it's happening, and it's happening on your platform, and you have a certain responsibility. Like what's coming out, it is your product. It has your name on it. And it's very rare that he just confronts a guest and just shuts them down like directly. Cause that goes against the grain of what his show's always been about.
Yeah. And I think it's very important too, to keep in mind, like the age of the man in question here. Like when we say like where I said earlier, like, yeah, we've all said something that could be, interpreted as problematic at some point in our lives. No secret that I used to rap. So that was a big part of my life, some years ago. I said some things on a couple songs that I am not proud of, specifically homophobic slurs that I threw out there once or twice on record. I am ashamed of that. That is something that I look back on and have deep shame and regret over. Um, I also was in my teens, in my early 20s. I grew up. I matured. I, got to experience more of the world and realize, oh, that was really stupid. That was really hurtful. That was really ignorant. Do better, Anthony. How is it that a grown man can devolve seemingly over this time? Like what Joe Rogan's in his 50s?
It's like 54.
It's like, come on now. I mean, you're in your mid 50s and this is the level of activity going on in your brain that's acceptable. I mean, I can't wrap my head around it. I cannot wrap my head around it one bit. People are supposed to get better as they age. Very simple.
And he'll be on the UFC broadcast until he decides to stop, and that's
without a doubt.
And that's really something.
Without a doubt. Like, yeah, and MMA fans proved exactly who they were.
Right. And I'm not here to go, oh, Joe Rogan should be thrown out of the UFC and his legacy should be tarnished forever. No, that's not what I'm saying. But there should be some accountability, some measure of more than a short Instagram story or video where he's apologizing and saying he should learn. I'm okay with that mea culpa, but I don't know what the answer is, but I believe he's working with Daniel Cormier this weekend. And I think if Daniel Cormier were sitting in the room when the recordings were going on, I think he would have probably taken issue with what Joe Rogan had said. So I feel like there's
maybe.
Yes, okay, fair enough. But the fact that, and I think it was MMA Junkie who compiled a big list of these, which was basically the UFC fighters and former UFC fighters. I stand with Joe Rogan and the Jake Shields and Josh Thompsons of the world who were speaking up, and Tim Kennedy, by the way, noticed a trend here, all speaking up on behalf of Joe Rogan. I'm trying to figure out a way to put into words besides just don't say anything. There's nothing to gain with standing alongside Joe Rogan. UFC fighters, Joe Rogan isn't your friend. Dana White has made this clear that fighters and employees, Dana isn't your friend. Joe Rogan isn't your friend. They're people you work with. So I understand you don't want to hate somebody you work with, but there's nothing to be gained by sticking up for somebody. He's not going to sleep with you, I think was the expression people always use. It's all you're doing is pointing out your own deficiencies, your own shortcomings, to say, yes, this guy is on record saying the N-word who knows how many times. I'm on his side. What universe is this that people can actually say that's a stance that they can support? There's a difference between I want to cancel Joe Rogan, I want him to be fired forever, versus, okay, I don't think what he said is acceptable. Why is it that fighters are so keen to try and be on the company line, so to speak, to defend Joe Rogan? I don't get it.
It's all or nothing approach that it's just not necessary. Like, it's okay. Like, if you are a fighter or a coach or whoever, and you consider yourself a friend of Joe Rogan, fine.
Yes.
But it's okay to tell your friends that they're wrong.
Yes, absolutely.
It's perfectly acceptable. In fact, it makes you a better friend. It
does make you a better friend. To say to them personally, to say to them publicly, it makes you a better person, I think, to be able to like, okay, The Rock. We'll go with The Rock. He was a very public thing because he was on Rogan's side, and then the N-word video came out and other things, and he said, I didn't know this. Yeah. My viewpoint has changed. This matters very greatly. I knew some of the things that were in context, out of context. I knew some of the things he said were problematic, but this changes my mind.
Yeah.
You know,
and he literally said, Joe is my friend and he's still my friend, but this was wrong.
Yes. Yeah. And why is that and that shouldn't, okay. That should not be a controversial stance.
No.
I would bet all of the money in my wallet right now that people are flaming The Rock because of his saying that what Joe Rogan said was wrong. And I just can't wrap my head around the notion that the Josh Thompsons would be like, Joe Rogan doesn't deserve to be. Josh Thompson tweeted about it, so it's not. I'm not just picking on Josh Thompson. That
who's known to say a lot of intelligent things,
of course,
by the way.
Yeah, but not to pick on Josh Thompson, but multiple of these fighters. I mean, it's the junkie list that you can look up. That I stand with him. Some of the things he said, or to not even address the things that Rogan said, and instead speak up against this so-called cancel culture.
Oh, the woke mob and
the woke movement is trying to cancel and silence Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
No, dude. They want to, how about saying, hey, don't say those words 2 years ago. This isn't, hey, Joe Rogan is an adolescent. Maybe you should clean up your act. This is, a recent thing that he is dealing with and encountering, and increasingly encountering by the guests that he brings on his broadcasts. I just can't figure out why people need to be sycophants to Joe Rogan of all people. Joe Rogan can say whatever. Joe Rogan can stick up for himself. I don't need to have Michael Chandler, the prolific Black History Month hero, actually actively speak up on behalf of Joe Rogan while having a black son. So you're condoning Joe Rogan saying racial slurs. Wait, what? How do you line those up? How do you reconcile your beliefs? And we shouldn't have to have this conversation at all. You know why? More fighters need to have a black belt in what, Ant Walker?
Shutting the fuck up.
Thank you.
This would be an incredible time to misquote Dr. Martin Luther King. Like this feels like the right time to do it. It is. I think we just watched my opinion about this whole topic evolve as I got more information on the show. It's okay to do that outside in real life. Like it's okay to evolve. It's okay to think broader, and as you collect new data to revamp your stance. It's perfectly acceptable. Try it, you dummies. Try it.
Quote, this world and nation are in a strange place right now, and the people who bring dialogue in seek of the truth are not our enemies. Joe Rogan is a friend with a huge heart for everyone. Josh Thompson.
Okay.
Why?
Thank you, Josh. Thank you for the word salad.
He's trying to bring dialogue in seek of the truth. Okay. What are not our enemies? What truth are you trying to find here? I guess I had more to say on this than I thought I did a few minutes ago.
It's cool because I didn't think we were going to talk about it this long, but hey, it is what it is. So because of that, we're probably going to have to shorten the rest of the show a little bit. But hey, we have to talk about the important topic. So it is what it is. All right, fellas. So there was relevant UFC action that took place Saturday. Sean Strickland wins a split decision against.
Speaking of people that say really crazy, ridiculous, horrible things,
what a great person to start off Black History Month in the main event against Jack Hermansson. So, fellas, do we think that Sean Strickland has enough to make that run at the middleweight belt? And does a Hermansson fight up a stock or down your stock in that sense?
I feel about the same about him as I did before. Even though I thought Hermansson would beat him and was very wrong about that fight, he could make a run at the belt. I think he has a title shot probably within the next 12 months. I think he's one more win away. I mean, this weekend, we're going to have Adesanya versus Whittaker too, and we're going to have Brunson versus Cannonier. I think Strickland's next opponent is going to be one of those four men. Probably not Adesanya. It's almost certainly going to be one of the other three. And if he beats that person, and there's no reason he won't at least be pretty close to even money against them, I think he has a title shot coming. Part of it is that Strickland is on a fantastic run, And part of it is that middleweight remains wide open. If you've won 3 or 4 fights in a row and you haven't fought Israel Adesanya yet, step on up and get yours. So yeah, it's a good time to be Sean Strickland. You know, I mean, his living room still looks like struggle, but the rest of his life seems to be in pretty good order.
I just want to point out, like, this is such an interesting career turnaround for Strickland. Like,
Oh yeah.
I very distinctly remember the days at welterweight where he was a good fighter, but he didn't really stand out. There was that he was like the creative fighter. Like, he looked very plain. He fought very plain, and it just was nothing that stood out about him. Now, I mean, we're talking about a legit threat to the middleweight division, and in my mind, he is right up there for a title shot. Like, I don't really think there's much separating him. Do I think that either Adesanya or Whittaker will have trouble with him? No, not necessarily. I think either one of those guys gets through Strickland pretty definitively, but he certainly earned his chance to be there to compete against either one of those men in my eyes.
And what truly has made him a breakout fighter is not his technical boxing. It's not his accuracy. It's not his volume. It's not even his power, like the power that made him put away Brandon Allen. It's his takedown defense. It is an absolute impenetrable shell. The last person to take him down was Kamaru Usman, and he only did twice. I forget how many attempts they had, but I believe he wasn't 2 for 2. I believe Usman was like 2 for 8 or 2 for 10 or so. Whatever he had been doing to improve his game up a weight class, to not deplete himself, to wear himself out and, you know, make whatever he does to get up there, has just been phenomenal. The guy's 19-0 at middleweight in his career. Like, he hasn't, his losses to Easy
Middleweight
Dos
or
Santos-
above.
Yeah, right. Well, no, I didn't count that because I didn't count
Okay.
Brandon Allen, or I think it was just Brandon Allen fight at 195. Easy Dos Santos, Kamaru Usman, and Santiago Ponzinibbio, the only guys that beat him, and they did so in different ways, but all at welterweight. So just in terms of what he is, what his career reinvention as a middleweight is super impressive. Do I think it's enough to dethrone the champion? No. But Israel Adesanya's best weapon isn't his jab, and we know that. It's an effective tool. He can hit pretty well from a distant range. It's more the reach that is why his jab can be so good. It's not that he has like an Usman jab, the power jab, or some other fighters that have a very
Whittaker.
effective.
No, Whittaker in a vacuum has a better jab than Adesanya.
Whittaker, yes, absolutely. Gegard Mousasi, a jab that is a weapon. When his only weapon is the jab, and other than weaponizing your cardio and weaponizing your takedown defense to try and make somebody pay for taking you down, I don't know if it's enough to get past the top 5 in the division. I think that Jack Hermansson was, I thought he was actually going to finish Hermansson, but he never really seemed to, like, all he had to do, and I'm armchair quarterbacking this, of course, was jab 2. There was only a couple jab 2s in there. There was only a few right crosses in there. And whenever they landed. That's redundant on purpose because they landed. If he scored with the jab, he could bring the right hand over the top. He did it multiple times, but didn't commit to it. A guy that stands in the pocket, pop bang. If he can do that, he can beat most of the guys in the division if he doesn't get taken down. But if he doesn't let his hands go, like we saw here, kind of like we saw against Hull, I could see him stalling out at the top of the division.
Yeah, and I think too, like, with his takedown defense being the strongest thing that he has going for him, and no matter what, forcing his game on someone else through that takedown defense, Adesanya ain't trying to double leg you, bro. Whittaker has the capabilities to do it, but that certainly is not his first go to. In fact, I would even say that, like, you look at the list of opponents that Strickland has had, and not one of these guys is just as good of a striker as they are an offensive wrestler. At least at the time that he fought him. I think we can, in hindsight, Kamaru Usman has moved up to that level, but at the time they fought, that certainly wasn't the case. I'm inclined to believe that great takedown defense will rapidly erode when you have a striker as capable of Whittaker in front of you. when you know he can do what he can do with the hands and feet, and then change levels. That's a different ball game, and that's not something that he's faced yet.
Or if you have somebody with the power of a Derrick Brunson throwing at you, scooping you up, because we know that Brunson back in the Strikeforce days, we didn't love him because his performances were a little grindy. As he's moved up in the rankings, he's added power to I can pick you up like a toy, and that would be the fight I would like to very much see next.
Yeah, as long as Brunson doesn't get reckless in the approach, which is always been his Achilles heel when it comes to the striking. Because Strickland was really accurate with a lot of the counter striking. So I do think this guy has solidified himself as someone who we need to talk about in the title discussions, even if that proposed title fight probably isn't going to go his way.
While Jack Hermansson has eliminated himself all the way from contention, I think do we really further completely see his ceiling in this fight?
Yeah, I think so. It's like when he couldn't get the fight to the ground, he didn't really have much to offer. And I really think if Strickland wanted to turn it up, he would have finished Hermansson.
Yes.
Like, Strickland fought at a really like a sparring pace. Like he was so relaxed, he was so composed. That was him without feeling the pressure to do more. So I'm firmly believe that if Strickland decided to, and he really put the hands on him, then Hermansson wouldn't have been in there very long.
Duffy, you were about to say something.
Well, I mean, I was going to save part of this for my I'm not surprised segment, but it's a little more sprawling than that. It was interesting no pun intended. It was interesting to kind of see how the fight played out. I said on the recap, I've been guilty over probably the past 2 years or so of just immediately defaulting to referring to Jack Hermansson as like an intelligent, cerebral fighter, and I have to change my tune on that. I think I came to that because he's an intelligent, cerebral sounding person outside the cage, and he's definitely opportunistic in the cage. I mean, just think no further than him tapping out Gastelum at that moment where, most fighters are like, okay, yeah, let go of my leg. We're going to stand back up now. And he's like, no, we're going to do this. But this is twice now. The Vettori fight and now against Strickland that Hermansson, when his basic game plan did not work, was incapable of making adjustments between rounds.
Yep.
It was the Phil Davis thing where if he lost the first round, you can turn the TV off because the rest of the rounds are going to go exactly the same. Even in the fifth round, where he had a sense of urgency, he knew he had to be down on the scorecards except for Sal Diamatos and probably needed to finish. All he did was the same thing a little bit harder. Like there was no new wrinkle. He didn't suddenly like go for an Imanari roll or go crashing in with like a flying knee to at least like collapse the pocket and get his hands on the man. Like maybe he's not, and this sounds insulting. I don't mean it to be, but maybe he's not the plus fight IQ guy that I always thought he was. And on the flip side, Strickland, for a guy who on the mic comes across as a complete meathead, he's an intelligent fighter. Yeah. And I had this conversation with a friend of the show and your boss at MMA On Point, Mr. Hartley. There are different types of intelligence. Before this industry sucked me in, I spent 15 years of my working life basically correcting the spelling and grammar of surgeons. I was in the medical industry writing educational and marketing materials. I spent 15 years of my life correcting surgeons' spelling and grammar for them. It did not make me more intelligent than them in any way other than one very narrow definition of intelligence. And by the same token, again, he comes across as just kind of an unsophisticated guy on the mic, but he's not Mike Perry. Mike Perry is a guy who talks like a meathead and exhibits poor impulse control in his life. That is not Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland clearly has excellent executive function. Like, you don't do the things that he's doing without training hard and training smart. And at the UFC Vegas 47 post-fight presser, he was just kind of very open and honest about things. He's like, I talk the way I do because I'm a high school dropout and I only even finished 3 or 4 years of school. Like, do you want me to just put duct tape over my mouth? It's like, no, as long as you stick to certain, like stick away from maybe certain subjects. No, just be you and speak your truth. But yeah, like he is intelligent in the ways that matter. And I have underrated that for a long time, in the same way that I've probably overrated Jack Hermansson's in-cage intelligence just by conflating it with, what a well-spoken guy he is outside the cage. I mean, English is at best Jack Hermansson's third language.
Yeah.
And he speaks better than Strickland does, It's kind of like GSP blowing up at Nick Diaz and saying, I speak English better than you do, Like,
but does he write better than Strickland?
I guarantee he does. I don't want to see Strickland's poetry.
I definitely, absolutely do. I want to see a poetry slam between those two.
That would be that. Maybe it could be on the JRE. That's.
So, I'm going to bring up a totally random thought. I've always wanted main event fighters to compete in something else before or after they fight each other. Play each other on UFC fight game. Play ping pong, but some other one-on-one battle in addition to the fact that you're fighting each other for 25 minutes.
That'd be great promo for big fights.
An MMA fight is like a game of chess. Shing. Yeah.
Set them to play chess against one another. Seriously, the options are there, and a non-contact sport so they don't really get injured. Make them go play three holes
play
of golf.
a game of horse or something, and
sure,
put on the big like inflatable sumo outfits like that you get at like those bounce house parties.
You could sell so well.
And you know what? That idea is really a winner when the non-contact competition is addressed in the post-fight interview. When he's like, man, when he moved that rook over to Queen Square 3, it's like I knew I had to punch his face out.
I mean, there's a precedent for it. They make the tough coaches, like do free throws or free kicks against each other or play pool or whatever every season.
Yes, they do. It's one of the most entertaining parts about tough seasons at all now.
Yeah. Wow. Tough. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. Let's keep.
Why is there another tough season happening?
Oh God, no. All right, fellas. So let's keep it pushing, man. I think it's time for the best title segment in all of media history. I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcon. So where we share something that surprised us or ironically did not over the course of the past week. Ben, I'm going to start with you. What's your I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons?
I really got it all out. I was going to talk about the little contrast between Strickland and Hermansson. So I'm all out. I'm good.
All right. Sweet. All right, Jay, what's your I'm not surprised?
I wish I could say I'm all out, but unfortunately, the internet and the news cycle and combat sports as a whole, not just the UFC and MMA, continue on rolling. So you guys remember the little fledgling organization called Triller that had a little fight club branch that invented a new sport that Vitor Belfort thought would be an Olympic sport called Triad Combat, which is a mixed hybrid bizarro boxing MMA stand-up weird massive the whole situation where the fights don't count in anybody's record. Well, Triller was going to stage a second event where in the Toyota Center in Houston at the end of February 26th, this was Triad Combat 2 in the Toyota Center where UFC 271 will be this weekend. And they decided to reschedule the event out of an abundance of caution for the Fight Club athletes. Given the current state of the Omicron virus, it was in our collective interest to postpone this large arena event, claiming that COVID rates in Houston are just too gnarly right now, and they have to leave and not show their event.
They just didn't want to go head-to-head with Fight Circus 4.
Oh, man, nobody wants to go head-to-head with Fight Circus 4. Breaking news. Triller decided to postpone an event, even though rates in Houston for COVID are decreasing. They have been decreasing since January 20th. I actually saw the numbers myself. And drew speculation that no, it was actually because tickets were basically not selling at all. Triller notably took the event off of the Toyota Center base, so you couldn't see how many tickets were available to know this. So it's off the table because COVID, but probably not because of COVID, because the UFC is running an event this weekend. If COVID rates were that bad, we wouldn't be having UFC 271 in Houston, but we are. and there's a Tool concert, and there's Houston Rockets haven't slowed down their scheduled games in that same arena. So there's something going on there. So I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons, that COVID canceled the Triad Combat event.
All right, nice one, Jay. So I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons comes courtesy of Reddit, specifically the conspiracy Reddit page. So I came across this via Twitter. Like someone had a couple screenshots, and I went and looked at the actual Reddit post. There is a theory that Conor McGregor's bar in Dublin is actually a money laundering front for the Cannonier drug cartel that he has been tied to through a lot of through the rumor mill. So, long story short, the story goes that you guys remember when he supposedly punched a guy who was like a mafia dude or something at a bar. Well, apparently that guy was the father of some big trafficker that's associated with this cartel.
Wait, the old man in the bar?
No, someone else.
Another.
This was
the other
before
guy
the
he
old
punched.
man in the bar.
Yeah, the other
but
guy he punched in the bar.
Yeah, like it's nuts.
Not
that we have,
Machine Gun Kelly. Not that punch in there.
No. And actually,
the other guy in the bar.
And there are other more recent punches too after
Yes,
Machine Gun
that's right,
Kelly that
that's
we
right.
can talk about too.
Machine Gun Kelly ain't trafficking anything but
No.
herpes. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have interrupted. Please go ahead.
It's fine. You can interrupt when you're going to say
Please,
beautiful gold like that.
Yes.
Perfectly acceptable. So the story goes that there was supposedly a hit out on Conor, and somehow I guess he's making it right by having this bar that's a money laundering front for them. So, feds, do what you want with that. I don't know. It's just kind of fun speculation at this point. But really, if it's true, I'm not surprised. If it isn't true, it's Reddit. I'm really not surprised. So, I mean, I'm covered from all angles on this one. So that's what's up.
So, did the Kinahan cartel hire Justin Poirier as an enforcer or something? You're gonna break his legs. Just saying, that's an old mafia tactic. Gonna break your legs.
Poirier doubles as a loan shark. So
where's my money, McGregor?
Poirier like riding by on a Vespa and trying to one hand this Molotov cocktail at the bar and missing.
Yeah, he's like Poirier funds the playgrounds and stuff with loan shark activities. That's
gonna get like a next Netflix special in 15 years, The Two Lives of Dustin Poirier.
Such a 30 for 30 right there. Yes. All right, fellas. So we're gonna talk very briefly about The Ultimate Fighter. It's coming back, and while that just sounds like bad news, are you at least enthused by the coaching? Julianna Pena, the bantamweight champion, versus the former bantamweight champion / current featherweight champion Amanda Nunes in the coaching spots. How are we feeling about this?
I defer to my colleague, Mr. Petrie.
Look, I may have been a little harsh with the gun to my head thing, but there are so many better ways to facilitate this than to move people into a house together in 2022 and get drunk and mess with each other and have shenanigans and antics, and it was only a spritz and the hose and any of those things, and hey, you ate my asparagus stalks, you knew what you were doing. All of those things happened in Tough One. That was what, 17 years ago? These references I'm making are 17 years old references that I'm making. 17 years ago is when Tough One happened. And here we are with the same exact reality show. Here's an idea. Why don't you have the coaches coach fighters for 2 episodes of Dana White's Contender Series and call them Nunes versus Pena 1, Nunes versus Pena 2. And they each have 5 fighters, so that's 10. You have about the same numbers, and each of them go head to head throughout the night. Maybe it's kind of a tough thing for Nunes to coach 5 fighters in a row, but no, it isn't, because Tough books fights together and have multiple fights in a day, like 4 fights in a day. I think they've had tough seasons. So set it up that way. Maybe do some other way to facilitate it. Contender Series is your golden goose. Why? Look at this last card this weekend. The UFC Fight Night 200. How many Contender Series veterans were on it? I think half the card. I want to say something like 13 of the 26 fighters or so. My inflations could be overinflated, but not that far off if there are. Do it different. Catch our eye in that way. coach your fighters, maybe spice it up, because what we have here obviously isn't working. How do I know? No one watched season 29.
Nope.
You know how I know? I didn't watch season 29. I'm the mark. I'm the guy who watched all of the seasons. I've seen multiple episodes of Tough China. If I didn't watch Top 29, y'all are doing something wrong here.
Get help.
Yeah. I wanted to see Kong Lee coach, because it didn't make sense that Kong Lee was coaching in China. That's why I wanted to see it.
Yeah, that was a pretty funny one. It's like
that's why I tuned in.
That's the best you could do. Like, okay,
Vietnamese, right?
Yes, that's exactly why I tuned in, because that was the best they could do.
It's like, wow, that is funny. Yeah, man, I'm so over Tough, and we've said it so many times on the show. I'm so over it. I think this is just the wrong use of both Julianna Pena and Amanda Nunes. Like, if you want to hype up the rematch between them, have Nunes slaughter a featherweight. Man, that sounds a lot more appealing in my opinion. Have Julianna, fight someone else or something, or just do the immediate rematch. Like, I'd much rather see a fight than to see them delay what they could be doing so they can fake mad at each other, and then someone kicks down that like collapsible door every season.
The rampage door.
The rampage. Like, just someone just tears the doors made of paper mache or something, and somebody tears it down every season. Like, and I don't want to see anybody piss on a pillow. I don't want to be mysterious white fluid in the shower. Like, none of the antics that we've seen on Tough. Just trash it. Like, just have these people fight in an environment that isn't artificial, that isn't contrived, that doesn't take away their strengths, it doesn't add weaknesses, that just doesn't change the dynamics of what a fight is actually going to look like. Oh my God, you have a show already called the Contender Series that does this? Like, and I mean, this is just more funneling cheap talent into the roster. That's all it is.
It is, and like, at this point, it's a bad bet from the fighter perspective. You're stuck in a house for 6 weeks, and plenty of veterans of the show, those who did well as those who did poorly on the show, have shared how hellish it is. And at the end of the rainbow is maybe a chance to fight in the UFC after fighting maybe 3 times in 6 weeks, having to make weight, for weird, sometimes 2-round fights, for a chance to maybe be in the UFC. Like, how is that a better deal than winning some fights in the regionals and hoping to get a call from the Contender Series, or just hoping to get the call straight up in an era when the UFC needs so many late replacements? I mean, the UFC is calling up like 4-0 dudes that have like no film available on them, as late replacements at this point. Like, why would you want to be on Tough?
But at the same time, they're doing dumb stuff like having Chidi Njokuani come up through the Contender Series when the guy's been a pro that's ready for the UFC for years. Like, what his first pro fight was like in 2010 or something like that.
Long time ago.
It's ridiculous. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. So,
did any of y'all know that Chidi Njokuani talks like Dikembe Mutombo?
Yeah, I had no idea.
Not the accent, but he's like the deep, gravelly voice. Like, it scared me.
I enjoy people reacting to it. I had seen him fight in Bellator, and I always enjoyed. I think I even had tweeted about his dulcet tones before, but still,
no, like shit.
Now, would it be better to just work with me here if the fights in Tough were actual professional MMA fights? I mean that in terms of they actually count. Because as it stands, you don't gain the
exhibitions. I don't really. The thing is, even if for me, it's more the structure of the show itself.
Okay.
Like, because you don't have them in a natural environment.
True.
So if it
Very
goes
true.
to their record, like, do you really want that? Is that a really accurate representation of who you are as a fighter? If you had to cut weight twice in 6 weeks, and
my real coaches weren't cornering me.
Yeah, like,
and I'm not fighting in my weight class. I'm going to fight that anyway.
I haven't seen my kids for 2 months. Like, this is not natural. This is highly irregular. And then you fought twice on the same bum ankle that you rolled in the fight to get in the house. Like, it's silly. It's really silly, and it doesn't represent what these people are really capable of.
I have one last question, if you guys would entertain me here, and I think Ben might be able to speak to this a little more thoroughly. How do you feel about the cast?
Okay. Jay is teeing this one up for me because I've been doing a tough redraft series on Sherdog for the last year and change, where I just go through each season. Each season I'm through like 21 or 22 seasons where I just take the whole cast. I take the order that they were drafted by the coaches and I redraft them based on the knowledge of what they went on to do afterwards. And I rate the success of each season really by how many fighters made it to the UFC and how many fighters racked up at least 10 appearances in the UFC. Because not every season is going to give you a UFC champ. You're not going to have a Bisping or a Rashad, a Forrest, a TJ Dillashaw. What that show really does or did at its best was give you the next, like your next 5 or 6 years of card fillers. There's a reason why the fight nights in the mid-aughts had so many tough guys on, because it was people who already knew Nate Quarry and stuff from basic cable. They already knew who Chris Lieben was. This season is on paper the worst cast in tough history, and it's not even close. And that's saying a lot because all the recent seasons have been really, really rough. Like Jay mentioned that maybe close to half this cast fought on the Contender Series and lost on the Contender Series in a majority of cases. Like, you got a lot of 500 fighters out there. And I feel bad saying this because it's nothing against them. They're taking an opportunity that's given to them, and there's some of them that I know personally. Like I've known Caitlin Neal since before she was a pro, and have always kind of rooted for her to do well. And she hasn't. She's like 5-4, and she is not in the bottom half of the flyweights on this cast. It's a bad cast.
I'm just not looking forward to the day where this cast, and no disrespect, and I'm just not looking forward to a fight night card filled with them, like, and knowing that this is just a way to skirt like paying fighters what they deserve and stuff. I'm so over tough and have been.
I just remember one last thing I want to say. We're still on 6-figure contracts. By that I mean like 100 and crap. I actually figured it out once upon a time. But we're still on the same. I don't believe there's been a raise. $100,000-ish contract
for the winner,
for the winner of the season.
For the winner,
and the original 6-figure contract, half of it was like from Zion's. Yeah. Like, is half of this coming from somewhere else, or is this it's a 6-figure contract if you win all 4 fights and get your win bonus?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah,
wow, that is correct.
Yeah, and with the, one, these being considered exhibition fights, and two, the shield of secrecy behind pay in Nevada now. I don't think we'll ever really know, but I can guarantee you that the fighters who don't win, who are really going to be the card fillers throughout this, they're going to be in the UFC cycle for quite some time. I'm willing to bet they ain't making no 6-figure contracts for them.
It's another reason why I'd like Contender Series or live, whatever, so the fighters actually get paid, because I believe that the Tough now has like a finish bonus. You get $5,000 to finish a fight in a tough season. I think that's what they get, but I don't believe they get paid for fighting. I think it's just a standard. Do you
want to be a fucking fighter?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
season 1, Dana asked, "Do you want to be a fucking fighter?" Yeah. Because Bobby Southworth, who had like fought in Pride, was like, "Wait a minute, we're fighting like up to 3 times for free."
For free.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's never talk about Tough again until we have to make fun of it in a couple months.
I know, right?
I'm in.
Till we trash the finale. All right, so let's keep things pushing here, because UFC 271 is the big game in town, specifically in town for our beloved Ben Duffy. So we got to ask the age-old questions, man. Israel Adesanya and Robert Whittaker rematch for the belt. Derrick Lewis and Tai Tuivasa in a very, very important heavyweight contest, especially given what's going on with the top of the heavyweight division right now as far as where that belt lies. Jared Cannonier and Derek Brunson in another very important middleweight contest. Ben, I'm going to begin with you. Cannonier, Derek Brunson, who you got?
I have gone back and forth on this one a lot, and I don't feel comfortable making a pick even now that depends on Derek Brunson doing the smart thing and fighting to his best chance to win, but I am pulling for Brunson to win by decision. and just kind of mix things up, use the threat of his wrestling to keep Cannonier from kicking, make him like less comfortable on the feet than he otherwise would be, because otherwise Brunson's going to get knocked out. But I am picking Brunson to do the smart thing and win a decision.
All right. Jay, who you got?
I believe, and this is a very hesitant belief because, like Mr. Duffy, I too have gone, oh, Cannonier's got this. Well, Brunson might take it. Well, Brunson fights a little recklessly. Well, he doesn't fight as recklessly as he used to. I believe the wrestling this is going to be what will lead Derrick Brunson to success, to a 6-fight win streak, which would be, I believe, the longest win streak since he started his career at like 9-0 or so. And I think he's going to do so by punching his way into takedowns, fighting smart enough to keep Cannonier guessing just enough to trip the leg out and put him on his back for 5 minutes. I would be hard-pressed to see. I mean, Jared Cannonier is the type of guy, he doesn't quite have the Derrick Lewis takedown of avoidance style of just simply pushing you off. But Jared Cannonier powers his way out of takedowns and ground control. I think Derrick Brunson is big enough, smart enough, the way he uses shoulder pressure and half guard. I think he's going to be able to grind out Jared Cannonier and get a decision. But if he's not careful, that head's going to be a Pez dispenser. So Brunson, and maybe I'll change my mind in a few days.
Whew, yeah, this is definitely a tough one, but I'm gonna make it unanimous. I'm gonna side with Derrick Brunson here, and much for the same reasons that you guys are saying. Like, the wrestling is such an equalizer. Brunson has improved a lot in his striking. He has become a lot less reckless. This like blonde Brunson evolution that we've seen, like this renaissance of the Demolition Man look. I'm not mad at it. I think Cannonier is a guy who, while very, very dangerous, is one-dimensional enough to where Brunson can best him. Brunson can mix the striking in just enough to grab a hold of that leg and drag him down. And if you're relying on brute strength to get out of Derrick Brunson's top control, you are in for a rough day. Brunson is about as strong as they come. And a lot of that explosive power is so negated when you're flat on your back, your shoulders are pinned to the canvas. Not a whole lot of like genuine force that you can generate. Brunson is one of the best at just putting you on your back and making you stay there. So I think that's what this looks like. This probably is not going to be the most entertaining fight. I think for the first round, it's probably going to be a lot of anticipation of what could happen, because Cannonier is such a dangerous striker, and he's got all this knockout power and these great highlights, and we will be holding our breath during those first 5 minutes, like, oh, is this going to be it, man? But I think Brunson's going to close that distance, probably put a couple hands in his face, just enough to blind him, get underneath, drag him down, and that's probably where the rest of the fight's going to be spent. So I got Brunson winning a pretty clear-cut decision here. All right, fellas, next up we have the co-main event, Derrick Lewis and Tai Tuivasa on in one of the most likable heavyweight contests that I can ever remember. Like, Ngannou and Gane, that's a couple likable guys, but man, Derrick Lewis and Tai Tuivasa, like two fan favorites that have very action-friendly styles. Jay, I'll begin with you on this one. Who you got?
Well, I don't know why this fight is the co-main event, because does it need to be? In terms of Derrick Lewis being the second or third to last fighter on the card.
It's in Houston, so
they don't want people to leave.
Yeah,
I guess that must be so. Must be it. I mean, the main event sucks anyway. So no,
I'd leave.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to get out of there. You be
unplug my laptop, just kind of stick it in my bag. Peace.
Bye, guys. Yeah, I didn't go as back and forth on this as I should have, because Tai Tuivasa, what is it, like Shoe 0.0 or something like that, has seemed to have evolved a little bit, but not enough for Derrick Lewis. It's a far cry from Greg Hardy, Augusto Sakai, Harry Hunsucker to Derrick Lewis. I think the first round's going to be a lot of fun. I really do think that Tuivasa might push the action enough to make Derrick Lewis have to do something, because he's not going to jab and front kick you a la Cyril Gane to kind of shut down Derrick Lewis. He's going to try and get into the brawl that Derrick Lewis will be like, okay, I can get an uppercut in this right here. I see it being first round, lots of fun, but I don't think it'll end by first round knockout. Give me Derrick Lewis in the second round, after a wild and crazy first round. They go, oh my God, is that fight of the night? I think that's probably what it we'll talk about and be like, this has no reason to be exciting as it is. And that's my pick for this fight.
All right, Ben, who you got?
Yeah, I mean, I do love this fight, and something I said on the Short Dog preview, these guys are both like very likable fighters, and they're both likable in a very similar way. You can draw a straight line through Tai Tuivasa, through Derrick Lewis, and all the way back to Mark Hunt. I think of Derrick Lewis as the next Mark Hunt, and Tai Tuivasa maybe as the next Derrick Lewis, where they're guys that were effortlessly popular. Like Mark Hunt became a cult hero and fan favorite just for being Mark Hunt, you know? Same with Derrick Lewis, and it's the same with Tai Tuivasa. And in every case, the knockout power has always led people to underestimate kind of what a diverse and nuanced skill set they have, which in the case of Tuivasa is just coming along, but he's clearly not the same fighter he was 2 years ago. And their kind of happy-go-lucky personality and lack of traditional action hero physique kind of allows people to underestimate how focused they are on their craft. They're very much cut from the same mold. It's a big mold. But it still takes a lot to beat Derrick Lewis in a straight striking match without the threat of the takedown. You either got to be Junior Dos Santos in maybe the last really great performance of your career, or you got to be Surreal Gone. But otherwise, it's still death. This may look a little bit like the Dawkins fight, where Tuivasa is just taking a step up way, way above the level of the people he's been fighting. And all the tools he has play right into what Derrick Lewis wants to do. Because the difference between old action hero Derrick Lewis and now top 5, if not top 3 Derrick Lewis is he's become patient. And running straight at Derrick Lewis with strikes and trying to get into the phone booth with him is a recipe for looking at the lights. And I don't know if it happens in the first round either, but I'm with Jay. Derrick Lewis by knockout, and maybe instead of beer, I'll get to like eat some chicken out of a shoe on the recap.
Yeah, see, I'm not even. There was not a fraction of doubt for me. Like, I didn't really question my thought process when this was announced. This sounds like a Derrick Lewis win for me. Whenever you fight Derrick Lewis, you can't fight the way he wants to fight. And that's exactly what Tai Tuivasa does. You just can't do that. You cannot be in Derrick Lewis's wheelhouse and expect to come out with all of your brain cells. It just doesn't happen. And even if you fight to this extremely technical, capable way, and you maintain distance the whole time, you can find yourself like Alexander Volkov getting knocked out in the last 10 seconds of the fight that you were dominating. You have to be a Sirogan with the ability to match power and then the technique. You've got to vary with the body attacks as well. I mean, like that was a big key to JDS's win as well. Like you have to hit him to the body. You've got to do more than just stand there and brawl. And while Tuivasa has improved in a lot of ways the last several years, this is still a guy who's just 2 wins removed from flooring Greg Hardy. And as wonderful as that of a moment as that was, and while that cements Tai Tuivasa as one of the heavyweight GOATs, in my opinion, it's also Greg Hardy. It's also a guy who, while reprehensible and we want to see get knocked out every day, is not a top flight mixed martial artist.
And didn't he hurt Tuivasa before Tuivasa put him out? Yeah,
I believe he did. So yeah, you can't play that game with Lewis. You just can't. So I think Lewis wins this, and I don't think he cracks a sweat. I'm with, I forget which one of you said it's going to look like the Dukakis fight.
That's me.
Yeah, and I think it happens within the first round. This is not going to last long, in my opinion. All right, so now the moment we've all been waiting for: Israel Adesanya, Robert Whittaker, the rematch for the undisputed middleweight title. Ben, who you got?
I've still got Adesanya, but I feel better about the rematch for Whittaker than I would have at any point, between their first fight and now. Whittaker's grappling coach has been saying all the right things. Whittaker's definitely displayed some evolution between then and now, like not unveiling any other skills, but just showing a little more adaptability and patience. Because what cost him in the first fight was his aggression, like his mental aggression. He can't let an opening go without trying for it. Even if he's going to have to take one to give one, he can't take a clean shot without wanting to get it back right away. That's what really killed him in their first fight. Like Adesanya would crack him, and Whittaker would want to get it back right away just because he's a savage dude. He's not cool and composed like Adesanya is. I think he may have turned a corner from that, and that's going to help his chances here, but they're still not great. It's still a bad style matchup for him. I'm interested to see if he tries to take Adesanya down, and if he succeeds in taking him down, the next 30 seconds of the fight will probably tell you a lot of what you need to know. If he's spending all of his energy just keeping down this taller, kind of gangly, and frankly kind of slippery guy, and he's spending as much energy to keep Adesanya down as Adesanya is to basically stymie him, this is bad news. If he's able to actually advance position, get a little bit of a respite there, God forbid, land some ground strikes, we have a fight.
All right, Jay, who you got?
Do you guys remember the Adesanya-Vettori fight? Do you remember? Just think back. It wasn't that long ago. 263 was what? Oh, I don't know, like June, I think.
Something like that, yeah.
June last year. Vettori landed 4 takedowns in that fight. Do you remember him landing 4 takedowns? I don't, for some reason. And I ran the play-by-play of this fight card. I remember him tripping him and kind of, dragging him to the mat, but not for more than a couple seconds. I don't remember 7 minutes of ground control time in that fight. And that's weird to me. Because, again, it was less than a year ago, and I covered it start to finish. And that was Vettori's best way to win the fight. And I don't know how many rounds he won. I think I scored it 50-45 for Adesanya, despite Vettori landing 4 takedowns and 7 minutes of ground control time. Vettori's a better grappler than Robert Whittaker, at least on paper, what we've seen over the years. Now, granted, Whittaker has definitely shifted more to that. He grounded Kelvin Gastelum 4 times. I remember him taking Kelvin Gastelum down and doing what he did to him there. I remember him hitting the takedowns on Darren Till. And I think he dropped Darren Till too. And I believe he knocked Jared Cannonier down with a head kick too. I could be wrong with the exact method. I want to pick Whittaker so bad. I really want to I see the way he could win this fight. I see he's going to make it dirty. Do not let Adesanya use his 80-inch reach on you. No matter what happens, don't let him kick your legs from way too far away so you can't get it back. Don't come in recklessly. Don't charge in like a madman like Stipe versus Ngannou 2. Don't do that. Be smart, be patient. Push the pace. Make Adesanya fight off his back foot. Back him up to the cage, body lock trip. I can see how he can do it, but I can't see him doing it. And it's difficult to look at the strategy and go, his best path to victory is by grappling. But I don't think he has what Jan Blachowicz has to be able to keep him there for a long amount of time and not let any of his scrambles succeed. I don't think he has the size. We know Whittaker's not a big middleweight. And Jan Blachowicz is a big light heavyweight. And Izzy moved up to 205, walked in dripping wet at 204, 203, and Jan was 220 or so. I don't see Whittaker having the size to keep him there. Vettori's a bigger middleweight and couldn't do it for more than 7 minutes, apparently, which, again, still not registering that happened. Adesanya is going to style on him. And I picked Whittaker to win the fight the first time because I thought Whittaker would be able to reach him with a head kick because Israel Adesanya can get a little overconfident, I think it's a good word to say, and let his guard down and he can get slapped in the face by a foot. And Robert Whittaker can weirdly get a head kick up way higher than he has any right to getting his head kick up there too. Adesanya by 3rd round knockout.
I'm going to make it unanimous here. I see Israel Adesanya defending his title again. You know what? Jan Blachowicz, for as great as a performance that was when he defended his light heavyweight title against Izzy, he did the middleweight division a big disservice because everyone at middleweight looked at that and said, oh, that's what you got to do.
That's exactly right.
The problem is you can't do that. If you are a middleweight and you are supposed to be fighting at middleweight, you can't do that to Israel Adesanya. It's just not happening. much more capable wrestlers have tried and they have failed and they've gotten beaten up pretty bad for their efforts. Robert Whittaker, while he has incorporated a very, very strong wrestling game into his repertoire, that's not his first. It's not his first thing. I don't see it being the first thing he wants to do in this fight. And even if it is, the instincts kick in at some point and he's going to be standing there striking. I don't think he's going to be as reckless and crazy as he was in their first meeting, because that was uncharacteristic of Whittaker. That looked almost, and without having rewatched this fight in a long time, that almost looked like the Whittaker that we saw get knocked out by Wonder Boy. It was just like, lead with your chin.
Actually, that's a really good comparison.
Consequences be damned. Like that's what it looked a lot like to me. I think he's smarter than that. He's not like, there was so much emotion for him coming into that fight that I think he was uncharacteristic. But still, Robert Whittaker at his best still has a tough time with a style like Israel Adesanya. So you see what happens if you rush him. You get picked apart. You get knocked out clean if you just rush him recklessly. But then if you fight methodically, man, that's kind of Izzy's game right there too. So do you want to lay back and give him time to think as well? That doesn't bode too well for Yoel Romero to sit back and give him space and give him time to think as well. Didn't help Anderson Silva as well. Then let me think. So you could try to play the middle of that, which is kind of what Vettori did, and you get in close and you try to make it a dirty fight, kind of borrowing a little bit from that Blachowicz playbook. Vettori didn't look too good in that either. And he's a bigger, stronger guy than Robert Whittaker with a deeper pedigree in grappling. Aside from those devastating hammer fists to the legs in the waning moments of the fight,
they was finished fights, man.
I mean, that was earth-shattering Mortal Kombat style technique. Aside from that, what did Vettori do in that besides kind of low-key get clowned for 25 minutes? I see that happening with Whittaker here, except I don't think it's going to be as embarrassing, but it's going to be very clear which one of them is the better fighter, and Israel Adesanya should cruise to a decision, in my opinion. All right, well, we hear the crying kids in the background, and what a terrific place.
They want Bobby Knuckles to win, man.
They want Bobby Knuckles. I mean, hey, we love Bobby Knuckles. He is one of the more likable fighters on the roster. So is Izzy. Like, this is a fight where two guys you don't want to see lose. Someone's got to lose. But that is going to do it for this edition of Unleashed. So, of course, Jay, I'm assuming you'll be play-by-play on SureDog.com. All right. Ben, I know you got preview and post-fight show coming up.
Yep.
All right. Absolutely. So check that out as well.
And live coverage in the arena.
Oh, that's right. That's right. You're going to be there. So are you still doing the post-fight show? Or
I think so. I think I'm probably just going to probably call in, and, kind of give my impressions. It should be a pretty wild night. And
your assignment on the story budget is one of my favorites I've ever read, by the way.
Random observations and dick jokes from inside the venue.
It's beautiful.
That's literally on the SureDog schedule for me.
It's beautiful.
All right. All right, fellas. So of course I've got some stuff coming up for MMA on Point. I finished writing it out. Everything is getting voiced and edited and everything now. So I'll be back in action putting up regular content. So I'm very excited about that. So check that out on MMA on Point when it's ready, and just check out the other stuff they got too. They got some cool stuff going on, and there will be content centered around UFC 271 as well. Now, like, subscribe, share, tell a friend, tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. My son needs to put that brown sugar back into the cabinet. Thank you, sir. All right, and stay beautiful, stay positive, stay sexy. I'll see you when I see you. Peace.